Welcome back, everyone, to That Amazon Ads Podcast. I'm Steven.
And I'm Andrew.
And we are here to teach you everything you need to know about Amazon PPC, sponsored products, sponsored brands, sponsored display. We're going to hit all of it. We'll probably talk about DSP as well. But Andrew, how are you doing today on this fine Sunday afternoon?
Feeling pretty good, man. It was a pretty busy week last week. I feel like it just kind of carried into the weekend. So I was wrapping up some stuff, but all things are good. How are you?
I'm doing well. One thing I was thinking about, I was listening to a couple of our episodes just to, check them. And every time the intro plays, it always flips my Alexa device on to, oh no, she just did it again. Stop.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if that's a problem for everyone else as well, whenever the intro plays.
Yeah. Are you guys getting that? Leave a comment if your Alexa kicks on every time you ask it to play that Amazon Ads podcast.
And if you want us to change that, if you want us to change the intro for that reason, or maybe we just have to submit a code, something to Amazon to have it actually play this podcast anytime that intro plays.
Yeah, I'll try to find a place for that ticket. I don't know where that's going to go.
Well, we're excited today to talk about keyword harvesting, product target harvesting. And before we dive in, we did get a couple of comments and questions on our YouTube channel. So we highly encourage you guys to, if you have any questions, anything you want us to clarify, please drop a comment. We're going to either respond. Our goal is to respond to everybody, at least in writing on the channels. And then if we think there's a particularly good question, we'll call it out here on the podcast if we think a lot of other people are wondering the same thing. So, Andrew, we had one question from Lewis C. You want to read it off to us?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for commenting, Lewis. He says, thanks for the content. Very good podcast. I subscribed. Thank you for subscribing.
Thank you, Lewis.
One question. He says, many people say to negate the keywords that work in automatic campaigns and move them to manual campaigns to not cannibalize. Other people say that if they work well, why not have it in two campaigns? What do you think?
What do you think?
What do I think? Well, personally, I think people get caught up in this. This is a pretty typical debate, whether you should negate in source campaigns to prevent your ad showing up on the same keyword in multiple locations throughout your ad account. We're going to talk about what source campaigns and destination campaigns and stuff like that are later in this episode. But to answer your question, I personally don't think that you need to negate in source campaigns. And the reason that I would give, and there's a couple different reasons you could say here, but I would just say that typically when you're harvesting from an auto campaign to a manual targeting campaign, you're going to see a slight increase in overall CPCs for those targets. So if you're bidding, and typically you're going to be bidding less in those auto campaigns than you are on, let's say, an exact match keyword. Now, if you're able to generate a placement and a sale with your auto campaign at a lower CPC than you would in a exact match campaign, you may have to pay a little bit more. Maybe you're targeting a more premium placement with that exact match target. But if you could win two placements on the same search result page, why would you not? If you're negating in the auto campaign and the source campaign, you're basically preventing that auto campaign from delivering any more ads onto that search result. I don't really understand the concept of like cannibalization off the top of my head, just thinking about it. But I think that if you're winning two placements and one of them's cheaper, one of them's lower down the page, what's the harm in having those multiple placements show up? I don't really see a big issue with that. So personally, I don't negate in source campaigns. There are times to negate, but I personally don't do it in every situation.
Yeah, that's a good point that, sometimes, and it seems that sometimes the CPCs, so, and keep in mind that what your bid is and what your CPC is aren't necessarily the same. Sometimes your CPC will be a little bit lower than what you're actually bidding. That can happen for a couple of reasons. Number one, maybe everyone else is just bidding less and Amazon's a second price auction. But also Amazon will kind of have like a keyword relevancy score, product listing relevancy score. And if you have a really high relevancy, meaning the SEO is good, the conversion rates are good, it seems like they will sometimes give you a little bit of a discount on the actual CPCs. Whereas if you have like a brand new product, it's yeah, not converting super well, not many reviews, not a long sales history, the actual CPCs on that will be a little bit higher. And you can verify that yourself if you just take, two products in your account that have that would be competing on the same keyword, or not competing, but would be participating in the same keyword. And if you put them, just one product in the ad group and then rotate it out, put just the other one in the ad group, you'll see that the suggested CPC on that keyword changes because of the reason that I just tried to explain. So that's one thing that we've seen CPCs vary, and sometimes the same search term might get a lower CPC in an auto campaign or from a broad match keyword than it would from an exact match keyword. So you are losing a potential discount on that click if you are negating those keywords from. And also for Lewis's question, we'll talk about it a little bit more in detail as we talk about harvesting. So if you don't know exactly what he means by this, we'll talk about it in just a second. But one other reason why I highly, highly avoid doing this. Now, granted, everyone's going to be different. Sometimes it makes sense to do this. But for me personally, I prefer not to negate all of the keywords that I harvest out of my auto campaigns. The main reason being I'm still controlling the bids on those auto campaigns. I'm optimizing those bids, and those bids are heavily influenced on the past 30 days of data and the amount of sales that we're generating, and all of that kind of comes down to the conversion rates. So if you're negating literally every single search term that converts for that keyword, you're going to be thrown off your bids, because when we're calculating those bids, we're like, oh, it generated these many sales for the past 30 days. This is the conversion rate. Here's going to be our bid calculation. But if you just negated everything that converted from that keyword, well, now obviously you're only bidding on everything that didn't convert. And so that bid's not going to be very effective. Now, some people might say, well, yeah, but if you keep, optimizing these bids, slowly those bids are going to come down lower and lower and lower and lower. And then you'll get down to 5 cents or 10 cents after you negate everything that converted. And then you're going to, be targeting everything in your manual campaigns. Yeah, I guess that's okay. But the other thing is that the types of search terms that are coming through on Amazon are always changing. There's millions of new types of searches every single day that have never been searched before. I think this is an old stat, but I think Google at one point said 15% of all searches on Google have never been searched before. And I'm probably wrong on that number, but it's something high like that. So every single day, including of all time, 15% of all the search traffic has never been searched before. And so that's a part of the reason why we like these auto campaigns, for kind of researching and capturing all of these types of searches that are coming through that we couldn't possibly predict. And if you negate it and then reduce those bids down to 5 cents, 10 cents, you're not going to be having a high enough bid to explore and capture all of these new searches, because you've essentially destroyed your auto campaigns. So that's my take on it.
That's a good point. Especially the, negating everything that's converting in there. You're now allowing this auto campaign to go out and find completely new searches that you have zero, or maybe have zero performance data on, to actually intelligently or formulaically set the bids for performance based on those keywords. So your performance could vary pretty significantly after you negate all those terms and start showing up on new searches after doing that. That's a really good point. And just to play devil's advocate here in this conversation, the one potential reason people might rebuttal this argument would be that they're using the auto campaigns to find new keywords so that they can harvest new terms into their exact targeting or manual targeting. So if they continue to allow the converting terms to stay in the auto campaign without being negated, the campaign is probably, and sometimes will, optimize towards just the terms that are converting really well for it, and not really seek to explore new search queries to show up on new terms that maybe you weren't targeting before. So if you're negating, then maybe you find more relevant terms. Now, the counter argument to that would be that those terms that your auto campaign would pick up if you were negating all your converting terms, you're probably just going to pick up those terms in a broad or a phrase match ad group or targeting type. So you could kind of offset that. You're going to have other research campaigns outside of just your auto campaigns that you're going to be harvesting from. So that's just another point to add there to this discussion.
Yeah. So certainly, test it. We're not diehards on either one. We've done both. Andrew and I were working on an account together in which we were negating the keywords, and we did have that issue of how do we now optimize these bids on the auto campaigns when we've just negated everything that was actually driving the sales, which we were optimizing towards. So we've done both, but my default is to not negate. So good question, Lewis. We got one other one. This isn't a question. This is just a comment from Rob Garcia. He said, I really think you guys should have a course as soon as possible. Appreciate the value of these things that you've discussed. And then there was a reply from Baraha, saying, count me into for the course. So getting some interest around the course. Andrew, maybe we'll do it. We played with the idea back and forth around, should we create an online course, kind of covering all these topics a bit more in depth, a bit more technical, a bit more premium. So maybe. Yeah, we'll keep thinking about it.
That's a lot of work, guys. That's a lot of work. That's several a lot of time to be put into something like that. So we'll talk about it. We'll kick around the idea.
So let's transition into the topic for today. How do you grow your Amazon PPC with keyword and product targeting? Now, before we kind of really get into how we're actually going to be doing this, harvesting keywords, growing our accounts, Andrew, why don't you walk us through the different types of targeting? And yeah, let's just kind of define a couple terms.
Sure. Yeah, I think this is important. Good foundational thing, maybe a little bit, amateur for some people, but that's okay. We're here to appeal to, everybody. So different types of targeting. We have keywords and product targets. Those are available in our sponsored product and sponsored brand campaigns, which is part of the topic for today. Product targets also you can utilize with sponsored display. Then you have auto targeting, which is just available for our sponsored product campaigns. We have audience targeting for sponsored display as well, which we'll talk about both of those, another time. But the main two that we're really going to focus on are those keywords and products. So we have our search queries. So, what somebody is actually typing into the search bar when they come to Amazon looking for a product. And then you have product targets, which are, ASINs, products, other people's products that you want to show your product up on their detail page or on searches that their product is showing up on. So usually pretty relevant or a complementary product of some sort to yours. So those are some of the different targeting types that you can use within Amazon ads.
Yeah. So for this episode, we're just going to be focusing in on those keywords and product targets, primarily because those are things that you can find in your search term reports. And so we're going to talk for this episode primarily just around what is keyword harvesting, how do we do it, when we talk about source and destination, what does that mean? How are we actually thinking through? And also, why are we even adding keywords and product targets? Why aren't auto campaigns fine just as they are? So Andrew, what would you say to someone who asks that? Why can't I just use the auto campaigns?
Some people do. But the main reason why just using auto campaigns is not really as effective as is possible for you is that you don't have bid controls at the keyword to keyword level or the search query to search query level. You're setting your bids across it's a blanket bid across thousands of searches and product targets. So you don't have that specificity of saying how much you want to spend per click on a particular product to keyword relationship. So we extract converting and relevant terms from auto campaigns and research campaigns into manual targeting. So that way we can better control how much we're spending on that individual keyword. So that's the main reason why.
Yeah. We do want a certain level of granularity with our campaigns because greater granularity, that basically just means, greater segmentation, more levers to pull, is going to give us more control over the optimizations that we're able to make. It is possible to err on the side of going way too granular to the point of data dilution. So we kind of have this spectrum, right? Where let's just say all of your products are in one single auto campaign. In that case, all of your data has been aggregated. So you're going to, have really good ability to kind of use averages to kind of figure out everything. But that's going to probably hurt you in the long run because if you're just using the average performance across all your tens of thousands of possible search terms that are triggering sales on your products or not triggering sales. All of your products are all being kind of averaged together. You don't have a lot of control. But then if you dump every single thing into single product, single keyword campaigns and get way too granular and even non-converting terms, you're converting into even these low volume keywords. You got one click on this one click on that one, you're harvesting everything, then it'll be a little bit more cumbersome, a little more difficult to optimize. So we're trying to find that sweet spot, and that's something we're going to be talking about here. And yeah, Andrew, as you said, the goal of our keyword harvesting strategies, and by the way, when we say keyword harvesting, we also kind of mean product target harvesting. But for simplicity, we'll just kind of use keyword as a kind of blanket term to talk about our manual targets that we're going after. But the goal is we should have some campaigns that are set up on doing a little bit more exploratory kind of research for us. That can come through auto campaigns, broad match keywords, anything that's just going to kind of give us a little bit of a shotgun approach to try to capture all of the potential search terms that customers are typing in that we couldn't predict. And then we want to try to find which of those search terms actually ended in a conversion. So if it ended in a conversion before, there's a good chance that it could happen again. And so we're going to, have those campaigns set aside. We'll call those kind of our research campaigns, our source campaigns. And then we're going to have other manual campaigns that are a little more geared towards actually maximizing the sales on those individual keywords. And so when we're talking about our sources, Andrew, I just mentioned one of them, different campaigns. But why don't you tell us a little bit more about sources? Like, where can people actually find candidates for keyword targeting?
Yeah, for sure. I wanted to kind of back up just real quick and share one thing that we do whenever we're talking about keyword harvesting. One of the first things that we put together is what we call campaign mapping. And that is basically just drawing the lines between the campaigns and ad groups to their respective campaigns. So let's just say for a particular product, we have an auto campaign, and then maybe we have like a manual campaign. So we would want to map out like what the campaign name, ad group name is, and then tie that auto campaign to the manual campaign ad group. So we know that like anything that's converting in this ad group is linked to this manual campaign. And typically that just looks like a, simple spreadsheet that lays out the campaign name, the source ad group name, the destination campaign, and the destination ad group. And then you can pick like, what your match type is. Maybe you segment by match type and you only want to harvest broad match into this destination campaign. So it's important to have like a clear idea of this campaign, this auto campaign, and this research campaign are tied to this manual campaign. So that way you have like a really nice, easy flow. And usually for like third-party tools, this is you can set this up in bulk. Like with PackView, I think you can upload this and it outlines all the mapping for you once you've filled it all out. But that's kind of precursory thing I wanted to mention just before we dove deeper into this. Now, as far as sources for figuring out what those targets are going to be, what those search terms are, we have a variety of different places that we can look, and we have different methods that we can utilize. We can use methods that are based on actual performance data that we've gathered, or we can do manual research methods. And different scenarios require different courses of action. The first of which is talking about actual performance data. You would be extracting and figuring out which keywords and terms you're going to harvest from your search term reports. So you can look at sponsored product or sponsored brand search term reports and figure out in which auto campaigns and which products are converting on which terms. You're going to get a real granular look at, which search terms and which products are actually generating conversions in these auto campaigns and are potential candidates for harvesting and extracting into your manual targeting campaigns. Now, the second of those two is a manual research method. This is going to be more applicable for somebody who's in like a launch stage, or maybe you don't have a whole lot of keyword data, or you're just like getting started and you don't have a whole lot of performance data to actually reference. This would require you to utilize some different tools, both in Amazon as well as some third-party tools, to figure out which keywords and which search terms are most relevant to your product, most likely relevant. And this typically requires just using some like logic and just general common sense of whether a keyword is related to your product or not. But there's some different places that you can do this. So one of those for sellers is the Search Query Performance Dashboard. This is pretty awesome dashboard. It gives a outlook of your brand's most important terms, as well as the search volumes and some performance data around those. So you can find that in Seller Central, the Search Query Performance Dashboard. That can give you some ideas for potential targets to make sure you're leveraging and are putting in your manual campaigns to start off. For vendors, we don't have the Search Query Performance Dashboard. It's similar, but not quite the same. We have the Search Frequency Rank. You can find this in Brand Analytics. This basically just allows you to see the most frequently searched queries on Amazon, ranked from 1 to like a million. You can see which terms are people searching for the most when they come to Amazon. You can like segment this out by category and brands, and you can look at different timelines and different date ranges and stuff like that to, for various, reasons why you might look at different ranges of dates and stuff. But that's the kind of vendor equivalent of what you could equate to the Search Query Performance Dashboard.
Yeah, and it is a little unfortunate that vendors don't get that Search Query Performance Dashboard. One of the reasons why we love the SQP, as people abbreviate it, is that it actually shows the exact search volumes. So how many times these different terms were searched on Amazon, and you can look at it for a certain week, for the last month, for the quarter. And so that'll help you really identify what are the top volume searches. And one of the reasons why your search term reports, as great as they are for discovering potential keywords for you that are driving sales, the reason why that's not fully sufficient for all of your keyword kind of research process is because there could be search terms out there that are highly relevant for you, high volume, high opportunity, and your auto campaigns, just the bids weren't high enough because you were bidding around 50 to 60 cents to get these kind of research keywords going for you. And the highest volume keyword in your category is going for $1 to $1.50 because it's just so competitive. And perhaps your product is strong enough to actually be able to compete in that, but you never would have discovered that keyword unless if you actually dove into that Search Query Performance Dashboard and started digging around and finding that keyword and bringing it out and testing it in your manual campaigns. And yeah, and perhaps if you bid $2 on your auto campaign, that just pulled you into way too many irrelevant searches and would spike your ACoS and not worth it. So, only this one high volume keyword is worth that amount of a price point. So that's one reason why we highly recommend looking into, and this is also Amazon first party data, which is great. So for vendors, Amazon's just going to tell you the order of, like if you took all of the search volume for all of these keywords and then you ranked them from highest volume to lowest volume, it'll give you that. So it can still be really helpful for identifying the top traffic keywords for you, but it's not going to be able to tell you the actual volumes, which is a bummer because, at least for me, I find tracing the volume of search of these search queries to be highly, highly important in analyzing why our trends are moving in a certain direction. So yeah, that's all first party data. So we can kind of group in our keyword research strategies into kind of three groups. There's, your personal campaign data, which is going to be that search term reports and digging through that. And then it can be Amazon's first party data, which is going to come through those search term reports that they offer sellers and vendors, and then that are a little more broader scope than just your own campaigns. And then we've got some third party tools that can also help us. They've been aggregators of data on Amazon for a long time. Sandra, why don't you walk us through a couple of those third party tools, why people might choose one or the other. These are only a couple examples. There's plenty out there, so feel free to do your own research. But here's a couple that come to mind when we think about this.
Yeah, for sure. The three that I think of, or really there's really only like one that I actually use, which is Helium 10. I tend to like it a lot. It's pretty accurate and pretty on par with a lot of other tools. Jungle Scout is another one. Merge Words is one that I wrote down because that one allows for more finding more variations of pre-existing seed keywords or seed terms that you already have. So you could potentially put in a list of terms and it would spit out a bunch of variations of combinations of those different words. So you could come up with some potential targets that way. But Helium 10 is great. I really like it because you can get really specific between pairing a product with a keyword or with different keywords. So you can use the Cerebro tool and do a reverse ASIN lookup, and you'll be able to see, the most relevant terms or where you're ranking organically the best already, like which terms you're already ranking on. You can sort by search volume. You get estimated search volumes there to find search queries that you're maybe not ranking for super well, but are relevant to your product. That's my favorite way to do that. There's a ton of other different ways you could do it. You could look at competitor products the same exact way, and look up their ASINs and see what they're ranking on to find more ideas. And then you just create a list, right? You just create a list for each product to make sure it's product specific. You're not looking at like a group of different products that have a bunch of different terms, because you're not going to be able to see the correlations between which one goes with which. So that's how I personally like to do it. I use Helium 10 a lot. I don't use Jungle Scout quite as much. I know it's pretty much the same. A lot of the same functionality there, but those are some of the third-party tools we like.
Yeah. So now let's transition and talk about some of the criteria of what makes a good keyword candidate. So when it comes to actually digging through your search term reports, and we're going to kind of start with that. So you have your manual campaigns. These are going to be your destination campaigns. You're taking anything that's a good keyword and you're putting it into this campaign. And if you need a refresher on kind of campaign structure, that was last week's episode. So go ahead and check that one out. But you should be having some manual campaigns going. All of your best performing keywords are going to be in there. Yes, sometimes you're going to have a separate campaign for your VIP keywords. We're not going to worry about that. That's a little more complex. We'll cover it another time. But for generally speaking, your 80% of your keywords that are driving, a lot of volume, those will be in one campaign, and you just keep adding to it. You keep adding keywords, maybe another campaign's doing product targeting. You're building those out. You're scaling those. You're growing your sales. You're drawing all of those keywords from your search term report. So what are you actually looking for when you download that search term report? And now you're looking at all of your source campaigns, your research campaigns. Those are likely going to be campaigns that are probably your autos, campaigns that are all broad match targeting. When you're digging through this, what I've seen a lot of people do is they'll just say, hey, if anything drove one sale, one order, I'm grabbing it, I'm sticking it into my manual campaign, and I'm negating it from my source campaign. And, we'll maybe leave out the negating for now. But yeah, anything that has a sale, they pull it out, they stick it in their manual. Andrew, why is that a good idea? Why might that not be a good idea?
Yeah. That definitely jumps the gun. You're able to harvest a term that converted. It makes sense, right? Oh, this term converted for my product. It must be relevant. It must be, must want to target that in a manual campaign. But the part that we miss here is that there are a lot of coincidental orders that happen in these campaigns, where someone might search something very bizarre or not really related to your product in a one-off situation, or an extremely long search query that doesn't really make any sense. I'm not really sure how anybody or why anybody typed that into the Amazon search bar. You get things like that whenever your main criteria is just whether it got one sale or not. So you're going to pick up a lot of stuff that is likely not going to get searched again, or your product wasn't super relevant for it. Amazon's algorithm just displayed it to this person because it had much more information on their purchase data and purchase behavior and things like that. It was just super relevant that your product was going to convert on that query. So Amazon showed it to them. So yeah, if you're just looking at one order targets, you're going to get some coincidental orders. One other thing that you might run into is pulling a lot of very low volume keywords and search terms into your manual targeting. Things that maybe don't get searched very often. Like I mentioned, some very long tail keywords or arbitrary search queries. You might be pulling a lot of that in there as well. If you're just looking at single order targets, you'll get a lot of stuff that you maybe got one click at one sale, which you see all the time. So this, if you increase that threshold or that criteria from one order to two, you now have a much more validated search term, potential keyword to target. You're getting more validity to it because it didn't just convert once, it converted twice. So it must be more relevant than it was. And you exclude those different options for coincidental orders.
Yeah. One other thing that I think is important to note, and well, actually, let me just give an example real quick. With those coincidental orders, maybe you're selling swimming trunks for men, and someone typed in men's t-shirts, and people looking for t-shirts, you don't want to be advertising your swimming shorts. I mean, you could, but chances are the conversion rates aren't going to be high enough because that's not what they're looking for, and it's not going to be profitable for you. But perhaps one of your auto campaigns got this like one click, one conversion type scenario where there was some guy who was looking for men's shirts, found your swimming trunks ad, wasn't what he was looking for. He just happened to really like the design. And so like this one individual just happened to really like it. So he also bought that in addition to his shirts. So that could be something that we would call that maybe a coincidental order. It wasn't necessarily due to the relevancy of the term. And you could end up harvesting a ton of those items into your manual campaign. So one of the things that we like to do to prevent against that is it's pretty simple, but we'll just say, hey, we want it to have at least 2 orders. So if something has at least 2 orders, there's a higher likelihood that the person who was searching for this term and ended up buying your product, it wasn't just coincidence of him also wanting that in addition to whatever he was looking for. He actually did, in fact, your product when he found it based on what he was searching for was relevant. And so that can be a really big help. Now, if you are doing just things with only 2 orders, with things with 2 orders instead of just 1 order, there's a good chance that will greatly limit the amount of keywords that you're actually pulling in. So there is a time to sometimes use in, just 1 order, or maybe just do 2 orders. We'll go back and forth depending on the speed of which we think we actually need to work on increasing scaling these accounts. So a few reasons for why that might be. We won't bother going into all the details, but by default, we like the 2 order method. So anything with at least 2 orders, we have a pretty good idea that it's not going to be super low volume. It could still be but the chances of, a search term that only got searched twice that whole last month and you got 2 clicks and 2 orders on it is very, very low. So it'll help prevent against that low volume scenario. Because the other issue with having a ton of super low volume keywords, so let's just say these are highly relevant terms that you've converted into your manual campaigns, but all of these terms were kind of one-offs. They're not regularly searched. It's a few searches a month. And because you're only getting a few searches a month on these, and like 1 or 2 clicks a month on these, optimizing those keywords is very difficult, because typically what you're going to expect to do, and what most bidding algorithms will do, and even based on previous episodes where we've talked about bidding, usually when you're seeing keywords with really low clicks, what people typically do is they increase those bids, trying to get more visibility to them. And you just end up over time just inching up more and more and more, another 5%, another 10%, just keep increasing these bids. And because they seem to be like you're not being competitive enough, you're not getting enough clicks, when the issue isn't your bids, it's just the volume on the keyword. And so if you end up having, 1,000 of these types of keywords that you've slowly raised these bids up, maybe now the bids are twice what your average bid is, just because you're trying to get more visibility on them. And because they're all low volume, no single one of these keywords is a great offender to your account. Nothing's breaking the bank on you individually, but all together in aggregate, yeah, you're bleeding. You're losing, you're wasting a lot of money, you're overspending. It's really difficult to optimize these, where that could have been solved by simply just having instead of having 1,000 exact match keywords on all these low volume terms, you could have just had 10 or 20 phrase match keywords covering all of those same terms. But in that scenario, the data is aggregated. And so the general performance of all of these terms combined are averaging you a conversion rate of X%, and you can optimize accordingly. And so that's a good example of why we prefer to have at least a certain amount of volume on these keywords before we actually do harvest them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't want to belabor the point here or anything, but yeah, those targets that get, one click, one order that aren't relevant to your product, but you get a coincidental order on them, you're still going to pick those up, right? Like you're not going to negate those or anything in your auto campaigns. You may not see another conversion on that particular term, but your auto campaigns are going to fill that void for you in showing up on those like coincidental placements that are likely to generate an order for you. So you're not missing out on those, one click, one order scenarios. You're just catching them in a different way using your auto campaigns or, a phrase or a broad match target. So you still get to win those placements, but not, harvest them and have a bunch of sparse data within all of your targets, within all your ad groups.
Yeah, Andrew, let me ask you a question. So I see some people saying, it has to have at least one order, maybe two orders, but the ACOS, let's just say your target ACOS is 30%. They'll say the ACOS has to be below 30% or below 40%. What do you think about that additional variable of saying ACOS needs to be below a certain amount before I harvest it? And let's say it's two orders. They say I need at least two orders and ACOS below 30%, my target.
Yeah. Yeah, that can be tricky for sure. My general consensus would be that yes, I think having an ACOS threshold is helpful in pulling in the most profitable, so you're not pulling in unprofitable terms. But even if you did increase that ACOS threshold above your target ACOS for that product, you could, once you get that target into manual targeting, you could more specifically control the bids on that keyword in particular. So you would have a lot more control over how much you're actually spending on that term. So you could bring that ACOS down within your target ACOS once you've harvested it. So it doesn't always have to be under your target ACOS when it converts, because you can control that after the fact. So yeah, that's my point of view on that.
Yeah, I would agree completely. I mean, this is going back to episode 1 where we say bidding covers a multitude of sins. It's going to help clean up those high ACOS scenarios quite a bit for you. And for the same reason that we don't just archive every keyword that the ACOS is too high on, we optimize the bids to bring it down within our target. I would say the same logic applies to these harvesting. So actually what I usually do when I am harvesting these keywords is I'll take my search term report, I'll put on my filters, at least two orders, and take all my keywords that I'm about to be harvesting, and then I'll just add a new column, and I'm just going to title that bid, and I'm just going to enter my starting bid based on that search term's performance. So based on the conversion rate, based on the amount of sales per click that we're generating, all of that. Go back to our previous episodes to learn more details on actual bidding. But I just enter that into my bid. And then when I create my bulk sheet to actually upload all of these to the destination campaigns, that bid's already calculated based off the performance. And so if it got two orders, the ACOS was 50%, and my target's 30%. When I add this keyword over there, that bid is basically already going to be calculated to target 30% so that we can still continue to drive sales on it because it has a good amount of volume, good chance of success, and now the bid's optimized. So maybe we can do another episode, or maybe in the course or whatever we end up doing, we can do a screen share where we actually walk you through that process of what this would look like, harvesting from source campaigns through your search report, bringing these keywords over to a bulk sheet that we're going to upload to all of our destination campaigns, and get that bid calculated based on performance.
Yeah, I can't wait to do that. That would be great. I'm sure people are wondering, okay, this is all fine and dandy, but like, how do you do it? Because, just doing it in bulk is kind of time consuming sometimes. It can be tough. But if you have a good system and you have a good flow of how to build the bulk sheets more quickly, and you have your source to destination mapping and everything done, you can do it pretty quickly and efficiently. So yeah, be excited to show you guys how we do that. So that'd be pretty valuable for people, I think.
Now, Andrew, one other thing, search volume. We talk about how that's important when harvesting these items. What are some other ways people might try to validate the amount of search volume and like what constitutes, okay, this keyword has enough search volume outside of just the orders? What are some other metrics people might be able to look at?
Yeah, good question. You could just based on the clicks, you could get a good idea of, how much traffic this is getting based on, on average, how many clicks your other keywords are getting. If you're getting more than 10 clicks in like a week or, a couple weeks, it's likely a decent trafficked term, and one that is going to provide some decent volume for you, and is probably worth manually targeting. You could also look at the campaign or the ad group average clicks to conversion. So for whatever particular product or entity, I guess you could call it, you could look at the ad group or the campaign level average clicks to conversion. And if it's greater than that average clicks to conversion, that's going to be a relatively higher traffic term as well. You can also use like third-party tools and stuff, and the Amazon dashboards to figure out which ones are search volumes, which we kind of already talked about a little bit. Yeah, that's kind of how I think about it too. But yeah, I definitely love going in and looking at like pulling a search term report, looking at my top spenders, looking at the volumes across my top spenders, seeing how I might be able to segment those out and things like that. But yeah, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to add to that it's a bit more of a manual process, but if something came through your search term reports and had one click, one sale, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a low volume search term. It could just be that your bids weren't high enough before, and that's why you got only a few clicks. So you can take those if you're really trying to, when you're doing this process, if you got 1,000 new keywords out of it by saying, hey, it needs to have at least 2 orders, at least 10 clicks, whatever, and you got plenty of keywords to go, then that's fine. You can plug those in. But if when you run these filters, you're not really getting a ton of keywords, maybe you're only pulled in like 15 or 20 that qualified, you can loosen those constraints a little bit and say, okay, I'm not looking for a certain amount of clicks or one order is just fine. And you can take those search terms that you get and you can validate them in these third-party tools or the Amazon search term dashboards to see if, did it have low volume in your data because it's a low search keyword, or did it have low volume in your data because you just weren't bidding enough? And it's still a good keyword. We've grabbed it. We're just going to increase the bids on that.
Yep. Absolutely. Love that. One other thing is just to like check, always check this and we kind of talked about it already, but just relevancy. This kind of more applies for the manual keyword harvesting or manual keyword research method, where you want to see how relevant that keyword is to your product. Like, how would you do that? There's different ways you could validate that, but the simplest and like best method is to just literally search the term, and it's like takes a little bit of time, but it's usually worth it. And you learn some stuff. You get to see types of products and price points, everything in your market and your niche on the terms that you're going to be targeting. But check the search result. Go to Amazon, look it up, look at what products are showing up, look at the price points, look at are all the products that are listed, on page 1 very similar to the product that you're promoting and selling? Like, because if so, it's probably pretty relevant. So, and you can classify relevancy into a variety of tiers, right? Like you have keywords that are like super relevant and are much more like bottom of funnel keywords that are much more conversion focused, or you have stuff that's maybe like broadly relevant or slightly relevant to your product, where it's like a broader category term that your product falls into, but maybe isn't like exactly what it's, maybe it's not like a conversion keyword, maybe it's more top of funnel keyword. Things like that are important to keep in mind as well when you're talking about relevancy and figuring out, trying to find keywords that are going to convert for you. Just make sure you're tying that back to how relevant is this to my product, and like where do I think it falls in terms of top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel type thing. So typically short tail, more upper funnel, long tail, more lower funnel, kind of how to think about it.
I wonder if these third-party tools could have a smart way to kind of classify keywords as top of funnel to bottom of funnel, and it could auto-generate based off your search term reports how much spend you're spending at top versus bottom of
That'd
funnel.
be pretty cool.
If it doesn't exist, we'll build it We'll create it.
One of these days.
We're just going to keep building everything that
Every
we think would be useful.
idea that comes to mind,
Yeah.
we'll build it.
Anything we like, we're going to do it. Yeah, that's a good point. Something that I do, my method of checking relevancy is after we said a few minutes ago, you have that search report. We're moving everything over to a bulk sheet that we're going to upload. We usually do things manually on bulk sheets for most of the clients that we work with. That's just because we're practiced at it, we're fast at it, and it's way cheaper than paying 3 or 4% for pack view, which can certainly speed this up. But 3 or 4% of ad spend is huge. We love pack view. We do use it for the largest brands that we work with, but yeah, for smaller accounts, it's sometimes a big cost to try to stomach. So when we are doing things in bulk, which we'll show you, but when we pull those keywords over and we calculate the bids based off that search term's performance, what I do is I'll sort now before I upload it. I'll sort everything from my lowest bid to my highest bid, because anything that was calculated to have a very, very low bid based off the formulas that we've taught you guys in the previous episodes, that keyword, there's a chance that maybe it's not the most relevant. Maybe it is that swimsuit example where I'm selling men's swim trunks. The term men's shirts somehow got 100 clicks in only one order, or 2 orders, we'll say. 2 orders, 100 clicks. And when I calculate the bid for that, it comes in, Amazon's telling me, hey, we should only be bidding, not Amazon, the formula is saying, hey, we should only be bidding like 1 cent on this or 2 cents. It's that low. Those are the types of things that I'll quickly QA before I actually upload everything. So I'll just be like, okay, which keywords ended up having an extremely low bid calculated for them? Let's just double check the relevancy on those. If it was something just like swim trunks and it was relevant to what I was searching for, it's just the conversion rates are bad and the formula is saying we should be bidding 2-3 cents, I'll let it go. It's probably not going to get a lot of traffic, but whatever. At least we know it's relevant and we know that 3 cents is profitable. So that's the way I like to check relevancy before actually uploading things. I just check my calculated bids and look for anything with a really, really low bid and double check the relevancy there.
Yeah. You should double check relevancy. And then, that could be an opportunity or a potential situation where the keyword is actually a high volume keyword that is, you just had a high ACoS for in your auto campaign or your source campaign where it's coming from. So could see opportunities there where it's like, okay, yeah, I might need to bid 2 cents there. It's super relevant. Maybe I still win like a few, some placements here or there. But it could also be, higher volume, just needs to be bidding a lot lower because you're not converting as frequently. So yeah, good points all around. This feels like, keyword harvesting. This has been a good intro discussion. I think a lot of benefit comes from actually doing it and watching it be done. So hopefully we can put together some stuff and show you our workflow for harvesting keywords and give you a little bit more hands-on keyboard style feel for how we do these things on a regular basis. That's a good question. How often should you do keyword harvesting, Steven?
I opt for twice a day, just to really stay on.
I bet.
No, yeah, I do. Okay, well, yeah, that actually is a really good question. I usually will do once a week with new accounts. And then once an account, we've been working on it for a year or two, I drop it down to like once a month, every other month, because we've harvested so much. There is kind of a point where while we said at the beginning of this episode, like there's so many new search terms coming through every single day, not necessarily all of those search terms are high volume. So we still have those auto campaigns available to capture all of these new searches that are coming through all the time. But if we're looking for any new trending high volume keywords that we should be targeting, for one account in particular, every month when I run this, it's usually only like 3 or 4 keywords, new ones at least. The other ones we've been harvesting for years. So yeah, what about you?
Yeah, same. I definitely like to do weekly whenever I'm trying to ramp up new campaigns, new auto and manual campaigns, trying to get more stuff harvested and get those manual campaigns ramped up. I'll do it around a week, once a week. And yeah, that's a good distinction between the maturity of an account, right? Like if you've already harvested a lot of the high volume stuff into those manual campaigns, over time, like those highest volume searches don't really change that much. Like obviously you're staying in tune with that, throughout your analysis every month and stuff. So you would catch anything that like really went crazy. But yeah, I think, slowing the cadence down is fine. You get to a point where things are a little bit more manageable. It's mostly just bid optimizations based on the seasonal trends or differences in conversions and times of year and stuff like that. And then, it also kind of goes in waves, right? Like it's for certain campaigns that are maybe newer, maybe come out a new product, things like that. You got to be adaptable and flexible there too. So it's like maybe you have this collection of campaigns that you're only doing harvesting for once a month, but then you have these other selection of campaigns that are in a more of a launch phase. So you want to be harvesting a lot more aggressively from those, or pushing those a little bit more. So you got to have an adaptable approach with how you're going to do it and approach each situation uniquely. But that weekly cadence is usually gives you enough time to get enough data to be able to pull something and start pulling some stuff into manual targeting.
Yeah, I hope all that makes sense to everyone. If there's anything you think we missed, please leave a comment below. Next week, we'll be talking about negative keywords. So kind of the inverse of everything we just talked about this episode. When do we want to, rather than target certain search terms on Amazon, when do we want to avoid certain search terms on Amazon? So we'll be talking about that. Obviously, targeting is a long conversation. We could talk more in depth about auto targeting, the types of auto targeting, audience targeting. We'll cover those another time. But Andrew, we do have our first debate scheduled in the books.
What?
Yeah. So we have two influential individuals that are not me or Andrew coming on as guests to discuss the topic: is AI the future of, is AI bidding in particular the future of Amazon PPC management? And we got one individual who is working on an AI Amazon tool, and another individual who likes the old school way of bulk sheets like you and I.
Right on.
So we will just be having them on, having a good conversation with them. We will keep our opinions out. We're just going to ask any questions that come to mind.
I was going to say 3-on-1. Yeah. Oh man, this guy's in for a tough day, man. That would suck. But yeah, I was going to say we'll remain unbiased. We're just trying to facilitate the discussion for you all.
So stay tuned. Please subscribe to our podcast. I'm begging you. If we don't hit 100 by our episode 10, we have to pull the plug on this. So it would really make our day. We're getting close. We're at 75 at time of recording.
Nice.
So get us over the finish line, guys. And we'll probably do something to celebrate. I think if we hit 100 subscribers, maybe we'll give out a $100 gift card on LinkedIn.
$100 Amazon gift card, to be more specific. It has to be Amazon. But yeah, I'm down to do that. We'll do a giveaway. Get us to 100. We'll give away a $100 gift card
to one person, not to all the subscribers. That's
clarification.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening to that Amazon Ads podcast. We will catch you guys next time.
See you.